What is up, adventurers, and welcome to a brand new ShawnSetGO video. It's been a while since I've made a video, but I actually just recorded one. I don't know which one I put out first, but one of these. Either way, 2 videos, one day, crazy. I wanted to talk a little bit about a recent, post that came out and has been circling the drain of like the conversation that we had a few months ago about private servers. And so if that conversation bores you like it's kind of doing to me, like we've already had this conversation once, like we know where it's going, we know what's happening type of thing. I'm going to mention a few things about it and we're going to move on. We're going to move on to that. We're going to move on to a cooler subject, which I think is Classic Plus. So let's talk a little bit about it. I promise we're going to move on quick and then we're going to jump onto something else. But it's going to be a cool conversation because you're going to be like, wait, that was something. I remember this. It's one of those moments where you remember the crunch brownies and you're like, you're pretty sure it had a dividing line and it doesn't now. So, but anyways, moving on. So this post by Turtle Wow folks is, I think, sort of the begging and pleading side seems fake. If you read it in short, it's trying to say, but other games have done this. But and if you really look at it, you go, well, it's kind of different the way you did it. You didn't necessarily follow all the same things, and you're not staying in that enough of legally gray area. You showboated, and you're now in a state of, well, this is offering something that Blizzard is planning on making now, and not a lot of people necessarily can defend it. And most people who are in the current retail community, they tried it and they went and moved on. Most people who are playing Turtle WoW are the people who go, well, this version of Classic is, I've talked about this before, Classic starts very high and drops very low. Most people who are playing Turtle WoW aren't retail players and never will be. They were Classic players, and now they're going into this. Now, what do I think Blizzard should have done? They should have used this as a ramp to their version of Classic Plus. But I do understand Blizzard's position of, well, it's better to get rid of it because there'll always be that comparison. Well, Turtle WoW did this before you, and now they did it better than you, years ago. I think it's kind of like one of those things where, as much as we want to enjoy it, there's not really a way that we can enjoy it without comparison. Comparison's the thief of joy, and it would thieve all of our collective joys. So a lot of people, so there's a lot of people say you're so protective of Blizzard. Why are you trying to be protective of Blizzard? There's not really a point. And then you have posts like this, which are hilarious. It says, I do love that you guys poked and taunted the bear for years, as if you were untouchable. And once the bear took a swipe at you, suddenly decided that there needs to be a peaceful coexistence where you're given licensing and permission. I despise the present day Blizz as much as the next guy, but let's have some awareness here. There is a true irony to all this. And before I move on, my honest thoughts with all of this is that there's a way they could have gone about this from appreciation standpoint and tried to be different from all the other private servers. Nostalrius effectively was the precursor to Classic, and we always look back on these things not with nostalgia. As Turtle WoW most likely comes to a close with this post, which is somewhat of an admittance of guilt more than anything else. We're gonna look back on it and be like, man, wasn't that great before it came out? But people are going to forget, because ultimately, I think this is the biggest conversation with it all, is that a private server will never feel fully good because there's always a point, or there's always an end point. There's always a point where it could end, and that is going to dissuade enough people to where it's not going to happen. So if you're not going to go through legitimate means, people aren't going to care enough. But talking about that, what is the direction that Classic Plus should go? I did that right at 5 minutes. That's crazy. Well, what is the direction that Classic Plus should go? There's a lot of conversation of what it should be. I think there's a lot of really great YouTubers out there who are making series that you should see on YouTube right now, because they're doing amazing things about where the lore should go or where it could go. And I think it would behoove Blizzard to actually pull some of these people in who are respecting the classic bits and just keeping it in the theory crafting realm. I think it would be great if those type of things happen. There's so many cool fan theories, as well as, you know, like this has never been explored, but you know, we kind of have a way of doing it now. But let's talk about some possibilities. This post by Adelbro. It says, what if WoW had continued in this way, healing Azeroth over time, remaining and improving instead of expanding, building upon the current world instead of seeking new ones, feeling a world progress and not be in the underleveled zone limbo would be amazing. Hearing of its scars only through stories. I think it's one of these cool ideas that immediately sparks something in my mind where I go, you know, what if at the end of Legion Remix, the time ways really do break, and what ends up happening is we go back to WoW with our current characters. Possibly everything's been sort of reset, like we're put into another world, like an isekai, you know, isekai'd into classic again, and it's like the version of it if everything went different. I think it would be a neat way of doing it, but I don't know how people would respond. But a character copy would be kind of a cool way to be like, you didn't want to invest time into Classic Plus because you're not interested in Classic. Well, technically you already did, because we gave you a copy paste. So it's not going to affect your retail, but now you're already invested because you're already here. Like two versions of the launcher, right? Like Classic Plus launcher, or whatever they end up calling it, Classic Reforged. and then your Legion character or your retail character maybe, and then just go whoop whoop, or it merges into the game, like your icon like changes, I guess, and then you rip off the sticker and it's Classic Plus. Sorry. Anyways, rant over. This is an idea that's always been stuck in my mind. Imagine having healing Duskwood, and of course of its curse or plague lands of the undead, getting a new story and content in them, and having the way it's been before retold through player interaction. It would make the game, in my opinion, so much more special. Walking through a zone and listening to someone recall of what a destroyed wasteland it was, or in verse, walking through a wasteland and being told of the greatness of days past, feeling the stories etched into the earth, songs of gone heroes carried on the wind, instead of it just being like that for a decade. And the heroes who are an equivalent of a nuclear weapon compared to those mobs just doing nothing to solving it. Even for gameplay, I feel like it would be better for new player experience. Having a contained experience like Classic would do wonders for new player engagement retention. Seeing an armor piece from a zone that was 5 to 10 years ago would be more special than it being able to just be put to 5 to 10, 20, even 100 hours of grinding it out. I have hope that this is what Classic Plus might become. What do you think? I think there's a version of where something like this could happen. I don't think that they ever would. I think it's too much to overhaul for, I guess, like an iteration of WoW. As much as I do appreciate and love Classic and really vanilla for what they were. I mean, this is 6 years ago for even Classic. I don't think that, it's not that you can't strike gold again. It's not what I'm saying. But I do think that it is still very much a sub project of WoW. Now, has World of Warcraft done a good job of diverting and directing all of those players once that chart goes down to go to retail? No, they haven't. They've done really nothing towards it, and that's kind of a big difference from something like old school RuneScape to WoW. Is old school RuneScape idea is always to push them to the real moneymaker, something like RuneScape 3. So there's something in there that WoW could really derive from the game, is that Classic Plus is most likely going to be a smaller project, but the idea, I mean, we've seen this with the survey that they released that was like, I guess, one of the few hints that they've talked about. It's been confirmed, but it's all but confirmed. But if you go back to the survey, a lot of what they were mentioning that I've talked about as well is that those features seem like we're just trying to bring retail to Classic, as opposed to trying to make Classic Plus its own thing, like its own standalone thing. So to me, it's like Blizzard has found a way of iterating it similar to RuneScape, but in the opposite direction, and trying to get retail players to play Classic Plus when they don't feel like playing retail, as opposed to making the Classic group go into retail. And this kind of goes back into the Turtle WoW conversation. I said I would stop. It kind of goes back into that conversation where Turtle WoW was never going to appeal to retail WoW players. If you ask any retail WoW player who's tried Turtle WoW, who's actively playing retail WoW, they don't enjoy Turtle WoW. It's okay, but it's not really going to pique their interest of what they desire from current WoW. It was always about Classic, and so that's why Classic Plus is such a conflict to the existence of something like a private server similar to Turtle WoW, which always advertised itself as being like better Classic. So they did that themselves. So, but I'm jumping too quickly into it. Basically, I do think this is a novel idea. Do I think this is what's going to happen with it? No. I think that what we'll get is probably a few moments where you get extensions of peak moments in WoW, sort of a little bit more than what we're used to. I don't think we get like truly like phase 8 season of Discovery and just hit with bangers like nonstop, like and beyond, right? I don't think that's what happens personally. I think it's expecting a little bit too much from current WoW, which is kind of maintaining, like having a good release and then each major patch having something to bring you back, and then the rest is just like middling content to keep you like flat, or like I guess stem the bleed. It's like there's like a dip. We're not going to get it higher than what it was, but we'll stem the bleed for a little bit so the dip is less severe, like the U shape is less, I guess half a U shape. Anyways, I'm ranting again. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was a little bit of a nostalgic memory, and it's kind of in this kind of same vein of what I think the nostalgic memories we want, but maybe in that classic sort of sense. I promise I'll bridge the gap if it doesn't make sense right now. Says false nostalgic memory. Nope, just a broken NPC interaction no one cared to fix. A nostalgic Mulgore memory of mine is seeing young braves fist fight in a ring at the warrior trainer in Bloodhoof Village, but in later WoW and even modern classic versions, I've never been able to see it again. And since I've never seen anyone else mention it, did it even happen? It did, but has probably been broken since Kata. While investigating the scene again, I finally noticed the warrior trainer does in fact still address two of his students and say, Chad, or I guess /all. It's just that the response is broken and the two students never rise to demonstrate their new fighting techniques. For the others, it's sad. Things like this just cease to work one day. No one notices, and not even for re-releases of the old game do they fix it. Thank God for the longest time I was just imagining it. That's funny. Well, not, I guess sad, but the rabbits that path their interactions were called away to fight in the Great War upon the plateau in the Northwest Mountains surrounding Mulgore. Obviously, honestly, maybe. I wonder if it happens once and like breaks on a loop. That's possible. But my point is, when we think about a scene like this, setting the scene of like the leaves rustling, the very quiet like the Tauren, I guess, music set, right? We think about it playing before we get to like the severe drums, right? It's a scene of nostalgia that you want to, I guess, be as significant as it was, and it may never be. If I think about what I want from Classic Plus, it's not to have this moment again. I already had it. I already had that moment. That's why I really didn't get into Wrath Classic or BC Classic, is because I already had this moment. I don't want to have that moment again or relive that moment again. Reliving moments is just kind of, it was my generation's fault. It's a 90s kid thing. We gotta love nostalgia every once in a while, but we've kind of bled that dry. And I think people can still want something from that older experience where things were simpler and it was more down to earth and the leveling experience was more than the end game experience. But in all honesty, I don't want an extension even of this experience. I want something I haven't seen before in a setting that I do love. But I don't want it to be just strictly derivative, because that to me reminds me of one thing in retail WoW, which is you're enjoying your moment, and then Thrall pops up, and then you're enjoying your moment, and then Jaina pops up, and you're just like, okay, just say something to kind of be that filler, like particular person of that particular group who's on one side of the faction but can be both because of where they stand on most subjects. All right, you know, that's something, you know, that's important. So I guess when I think about classic overall and what I want is that new experience in an old setting. But I can't be the only one thinking this. So let me know in the comments, what are you hoping for the most with something like Classic Plus? If you want to mention stuff about Turtle WoW, that's totally fine. I'm gonna loop this back around and be like, I promise. It's like 5 minutes plus that little middle part. So what do you think should be added with Classic Plus? What do you think the version of it should be? Do you think it should just be bringing us back all those old zones that were taken away with Kata? You know, I totally understand that. I think it's just a version of Chromie time where it's like, okay, I get 5 levels into it, and okay, max level, dang it. Like, like how did that happen? You know, so I think there's a version of things that people are wanting. I just don't know if that's necessarily getting through to Blizzard as much as it is just remove the competition and then, well, let's just do that. Because if you looked at the legal notice that was provided to Blizzard, by the way, I didn't discover this. I think it was a video by Willie that they showed this. It says they're demanded to give all things that infringe on Blizzard's copyright. So all versions of what they've iterated on is basically going to belong to them if this goes through. Not saying that's going to be the main, like, oh, they're just going to reuse all that stuff and then do it exactly like it was. But I mean, it's kind of proven content, you know, like if it was good, then you just do it. Right. So, yeah, I think that's entirely a possibility. So like this video if you liked it, subscribe to the page while you're at it. Give me those essay long comments that I love to see. And of course, if you do enjoy this type of content, you can subscribe to my alt page, more ShawnSetGO, where I play things like Project Zomboid. We do a multiplayer server, and we play that together on stream. It's a good filler content while I'm kind of figuring out what I want to do the most with current retail WoW, which is probably like housing stuff and just kind of goofing around in there. But until then, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.